arrived at the motel just before dusk, its weathered sign swaying slightly in the wind. I was tired from a long drive and desperate for sleep. The office smelled like stale coffee and dust, and the clerk barely looked up as I paid for the room. "Room 12, end of the hall," he mumbled, handing me a key that looked like it had seen better days. The room was small and dimly lit, with a single bed that creaked when I sat down. The wallpaper peeled in spots, and the carpet felt damp under my feet. I didn't have high expectations, just a place to rest my head for the night. I dropped my bags and headed for the bathroom to wash up. As I splashed water on my face, I caught a glimpse of something in the mirror. A shadow moved just outside the corner of my eye. I turned quickly, but the bathroom was empty. I shook it off, telling myself it was just my imagination playing tricks after hours on the road. After a quick shower, I settled onto the bed with a book. The silence in the room was heavy, the kind that made you acutely aware of every little sound. The buzzing of the old refrigerator was the only noise, accompanied by the occasional creak of the building settling. About an hour in, I heard a knock at the door. I froze, glancing at the clock. 10:15 p.m. Who could it be? I approached the door cautiously and peered through the peephole. There was no one there. I backed away, dismissing it as a prank or a misunderstanding. I tried to focus on my book, but the atmosphere felt different now, heavier. The silence was unsettling. I closed my eyes for a moment, trying to clear my head. Suddenly, I was jolted awake by another knock, this time louder. My heart raced. I got up again and looked through the peephole. Still no one. My instinct told me to call the front desk, but a part of me hesitated. What would I say? Someone's knocking on my door, but I can't see them? Instead, I paced the room, trying to shake the feeling of being watched. A few minutes later, I heard the knock again, this time followed by a soft voice.
"Help me, please."
Chills ran down my spine. It sounded like a child. I hesitated, weighing the decision. I was alone in this dark, shabby motel, but I couldn't ignore a plea for help. I approached the door again and opened it a crack. "Hello?" I called, peering into the dimly lit corridor. No one was there. My heart raced as I slowly closed the door, locking it tight. I returned to the bed, feeling exposed and vulnerable. Then I heard it again, a soft thud against the wall shared with the adjacent room, followed by a muffled cry. My pulse quickened. I glanced at the clock. It was nearly midnight. I grabbed my phone, contemplating whether to call the police, but a part of me thought it might just be a case of too many late-night horror movies. Before I could decide, there was another thud, louder this time, followed by the unmistakable sound of a door slamming. My breath quickened. I got out of bed and pressed my ear to the wall, straining to listen. Nothing. I felt foolish, standing there in silence, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. I grabbed my bag, prepared to bolt if necessary. Just as I was about to reach for the door, my phone buzzed. A text. I glanced at the screen, but it was just a notification from a news app. Local girl missing last seen near 5th Street. My stomach twisted as I recalled the voice I had heard, pleading for help. I backed away from the door, dread settling in my chest. The lights flickered, and the room grew eerily dark. I scrambled to find the light switch, heart pounding, when I heard a loud crash in the hallway followed by footsteps, heavy and slow, like they were dragging. "Help me, please." It was unmistakable. The voice was coming from the other side of my door. My mind raced. I was torn between the instinct to help and the instinct to run. I backed away, panic rising, and suddenly the lights went out completely. I fumbled for my phone, using its dim glow to find my way. But as I turned back toward the door, it swung open with a creak, revealing only darkness. My heart raced. I couldn't stay. I darted past the door, racing down the hallway toward the exit, the echo of the voice trailing behind me, growing softer until it was nothing but a whisper. I burst through the motel's front door, my breath hitching in my throat as I ran to my car. I didn't stop to look back. All I could think about was getting as far away from that place as possible, the voice of the girl still haunting me long after I'd escaped. I'd been driving for hours, way past when I should have stopped. The road ahead was dark, and the GPS showed no towns for miles. Just when I thought I'd have to sleep in my car, a sign appeared out of nowhere. The Silent Motel Vacancy. It wasn't on the map, but the vacancy sign flickered weakly in the night, and exhaustion won out over caution. I pulled into the lot, the gravel crunching under my tires. The building itself was all 2 stories of crumbling brick and dark windows. It was eerily quiet. Not a single car in sight. I hesitated but climbed out anyway, the cool night air sending a chill through me. The office was unlocked. Inside, a bell sat on the counter, but no one was around. I rang it, the sound echoing through the empty space. After what felt like too long, a woman appeared from the back room. She was pale, her eyes vacant, moving almost as if she were on autopilot. She handed me a key without a word. "Room 7, she whispered, then turned and disappeared back into the shadows. I didn't ask questions. I took the key and headed for the room, feeling a strange unease in the pit of my stomach. The hallway was dimly lit, the air thick with dust. I could barely make out the numbers on the doors. Finally, I found room 7, turned the key, and stepped inside. The room was simple: a bed, a dresser, an old TV. It smelled faintly of damp wood, and the carpet felt rough under my feet. But I wasn't in the mood to be picky. I locked the door and fell into bed without even changing. My eyes were heavy, but there was a sense of wrongness hanging in the air. I wasn't alone. At first, I thought it was just a feeling of being in a strange place. But as I lay there, I realized it was something more. The room, it was too quiet. The air didn't move. The silence pressed in around me, thick, unnatural. Even the ticking of the clock on the wall felt muffled. Then came the whispers. Soft at first, like distant voices carried on the wind. I couldn't make out what they were saying, but they were there just beneath the surface, as if coming from the walls themselves. I sat up in bed, straining to hear, but the moment I focused on them, they stopped. I lay back down, telling myself it was just my imagination. That's when the knocking started. It was faint, like a gentle tap from somewhere above me. I stared at the ceiling, my breath catching in my throat. Maybe it was an old pipe or the wind rattling something loose. But the taps turned into knocks, louder, more persistent. They were coming from inside the room. My heart pounded. I sat up again, scanning the shadows. The air felt heavier now, thicker. There was no breeze, yet the curtains by the window swayed slightly, as if someone had just brushed past them. I reached for the bedside lamp, but it flickered and died the moment my fingers touched it. Panic set in. The whispers returned, louder this time, closer, like they were right in my ear. I leaped from the bed, backing up against the door, my eyes darting around the room. And then I saw it. The mirror on the dresser, it was fogging up, as if someone were breathing on it. Slowly, words began to appear, written by an unseen hand. "Don't stay." I bolted for the door, yanking it open, stumbling into the hallway. It was darker now, the light at the far end flickering, casting long, jagged shadows. I ran to the lobby, my heart hammering in my chest. The woman from earlier was gone. The desk was empty. But the bell I'd rung before, was ringing, by itself. The sharp ding echoed over and over, faster and faster until it was deafening. I ran for my car, my pulse racing. As I fumbled with the keys, I glanced back at the motel, and that's when I saw them. The windows, every single window had faces staring out. Dozens of them. Their eyes were wide, mouths open in silent screams. I jumped into the car and floored it, tires skidding on the gravel as I sped away. I didn't look back. Hours later, as the sun rose, I pulled over to the side of the road to catch my breath. I checked my phone, ready to see how far I'd driven. But there was nothing. No motel on the map. No record of any place called the Silent Motel. It was as if it had never existed. But I'll never forget those words on the mirror. Don't stay. I should have listened. I was bone tired by the time I spotted the Ridgeway Motel sign flickering weakly through the trees. It was one of those rundown motels you see on the side of highways, with faded paint and rooms that hadn't seen a renovation in decades. But I didn't care. I needed to rest. The lobby was empty, except for a balding, middle-aged man behind the desk, his eyes glued to a small TV. He barely looked up as I walked in. "Room for the night?" I asked, feeling the weight of exhaustion pull at my shoulders. He handed me a key with a grunt, not even bothering with a receipt or asking for my ID. "Room 16, out back." I took the key and made my way down the narrow outdoor corridor. The place smelled like rain-soaked concrete and old cigarette smoke. Room 16 was at the far end, tucked into a corner. The door creaked loudly as I pushed it open, and the inside was about what I expected: an old bed, a faded armchair, and a small TV that looked like it might not even work. I dropped my bag on the floor, too tired to care, and headed straight for the bathroom. The light flickered as I turned it on, and the mirror was streaked with grime. I washed my face, hoping the cool water would clear my head. As I dried off, I thought I heard something, a faint shuffling noise. I froze, listening. Nothing. Shaking it off, I walked back into the room. But something felt wrong. It was subtle at first, just an unsettling feeling, like someone had been in here before me. The bed looked slightly rumpled, as if someone had sat on the edge. I told myself I was just imagining things, that I was overtired, and tossed my jacket onto the chair. I was about to lie down when I noticed something odd. The closet door, it was open, just an inch or two. I didn't remember opening it. My pulse quickened, but I tried to stay calm. Maybe housekeeping left it open, I thought, or it just didn't close properly. I crossed the room and pulled the door all the way open. Nothing but old hangers. I breathed a sigh of relief and closed it again, this time making sure it latched. Then I climbed into bed, pulling the thin, scratchy blanket over me. The exhaustion hit me like a wave, and I was out within minutes. I woke up to a faint sound. Breathing. Close too close. My eyes snapped open, heart racing. The room was pitch black, save for the faint light filtering in from the parking lot outside. The breathing was soft, steady, but it wasn't mine. I lay there, paralyzed, listening. It was coming from the closet. My stomach dropped. I had closed that door. I knew I had. Slowly, I slid out of bed, every nerve on edge, and reached for my phone on the nightstand. My hand shook as I fumbled to turn on the flashlight. A narrow beam of light cut through the darkness, pointing directly at the closet door. It was open again, just an inch or two. I took a step closer, shining the light into the crack, my breath catching in my throat. There, crouched in the darkness, was a man. His eyes gleamed in the light, wide and wild. His face was gaunt, unshaven, his clothes tattered. He didn't move. He just stared at me, his lips twisted into a strange, silent smile. My heart thundered in my chest. I backed up slowly, trying not to make any sudden movements. The door was only a few steps behind me, but I knew if I ran, he'd come after me. He finally moved. His fingers, long and dirty, reached out from the closet, gripping the doorframe. "I didn't mean to scare you," he whispered, his voice low and raspy. "I just needed somewhere to stay." I bolted. I didn't care how fast he moved. I yanked the door open and sprinted out into the night, not stopping until I reached my car. My hand shook as I jammed the key into the ignition, and I peeled out of the lot without looking back. As I sped down the highway, I glanced at the rearview mirror. The man was standing in the doorway of room 16, watching me, that same twisted smile on his face.